Welcome back to the program. So, a lot of people are asking me questions about this Kill More Burritos Garcia and this judge making this ruling to say that he shouldn't be detained. Well, first and foremost, it's already been appealed. Okay, that's number one, and likely he'll win on appeal. That's number one. Number two, it does not dismiss any of these charges. He is still being charged with trafficking. Okay, that case is still ongoing. There's no question about that. Bottom line here is that the judge is wrong. The judge is stepping into a state prosecution, and the judge is going to get slapped back. It's just another failed attempt by these left wing activist judges to try to meddle into other people's business when they have no right to do so. So, again, I'm not worried about it. He's going to be facing these charges. He's facing, I think, 8 counts and 8 years or something like that for each one. So you're talking about a lot of years in jail. And again, I think he's going to be, convicted. And by the way, they say he's already going to be staying in detention on an ICE retainer anyway. So this judge is basically just grandstanding for whatever reason. It's kind of a stupid thing, but whatever. This is what we're dealing with these criminals, judges included, that want these criminals running around the country causing mayhem and violence and chaos and everything else. But anyway, that's all I want to cover on that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is what JD Vance said, which is pretty awesome. But before we get into that, look, I call them prostitutes for a reason. They lie, they deceit, and they purposely say things that are not true. So the new line in the left-wing media is, we're at war with Iran. World War III, they're going to retaliate. All this crazy stuff, okay? That's what they do, right? If it bleeds, it leads. Sensationalism, that's why they do it. They're scum, all of them. And so the latest is, are we at war with Iran? And even, what's her name? Bartolomo even starts that off with the interview with Marco Rubio, which we'll get to here in a minute. But again, the same exact thing. Listen, this is with, what's her name? I don't even care what her name is, but anyway.
Is the United States now at war with Iran?
No, Kristen, we're not at war with
Kristen
Iran.
Welker.
We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. And let me just say, Kristen, that we're incredibly grateful and proud of the American Air Force pilots who did an incredible job last night. The operation was really extraordinary. These guys flew from Missouri. They didn't land a single time. They dropped 30,000-pound bombs on a target the size of a washing machine, and then got back home safely without ever landing in the Middle East or ever stopping other than to briefly refuel. And of course, they did that in the air. So it's really an incredible operation, a testament to the power of American military. And I think what shows what can happen when you have that great American military in the hands of capable presidential leadership. What we did is we destroyed the Iranian nuclear program. I think we set that program back substantially, and we did.
Most estimates say between 9 and at least 17 years, or possibly permanently, which is probably likely going to be the case, because we're going to have inspectors in there. We're going to have people watching every single thing that they do from now on. So they're not going to be able to rebuild their nuclear program.
It without endangering the lives of the American pilots. That's an incredible thing, and I think we all should be proud. Whatever our politics, we should be proud of what these guys accomplished. A very, very high-impact mission under a lot of pressure.
Okay, so yes, it was, and these guys are amazing, okay? Now, there's been a report from this Medvedev, who I guess is the, the sidecar to Vladimir Putin there, and he's saying that he's going to give weapons or uranium to the Iranians. Well, good luck doing that. Number one, they're too bogged down in their war with Ukraine, and if they do that, we ought to take them out. Actually, we ought to do that. And honestly, with our bunker busters and everything else, we've now been proven that we can do what we weren't sure we could do, which was take out the Fordo facility. Well, yeah, we blew it to smithereens. And even if the Russians decided to do that and give them uranium, or if they're hiding uranium somewhere else, they don't have any mechanisms. They don't have any delivery systems. Bye bye. It's all gone. It's all been destroyed. Okay? And not just destroyed, just obliterated by not just the U.S. Army, the U.S. military, but more importantly, 75% of all the damage was done by Israel, the IDF, and the Mossad. They took care of business. We played cleanup. They did 75% of the work. We did maybe 20 to 25% of the rest. And so you put all that together, they don't have a program. And I know that President Trump has said that, regime change, at least publicly, he's saying that that shouldn't be the case. But then again, today, he came out with a new slogan, "Make Iran Great Again." I don't know. I might have to go get another t-shirt. But anyway, so he said that today. And he said, well, to make Iran great again, it would involve regime change. So we're going to see what happens. I don't know. Israel doesn't look as though they're done. They're continuing to do what they need to do. And all this bluster and all this saber rattling from the Iranians that they're going to launch a counterattack. How? With what? What are you going to use, a fucking slingshot? You got nothing left, okay? So don't sit here and say that you're going to do this and you're going to do that. You're going to sit there and you're going to take your beating like the little bitches that you are. That's what you're going to do. Because America and Israel kicked the shit out of you. And you deserved it. And you asked for it for 46 years. So again, we'll see what happens. But I wanted to talk about this right here. This guy is amazing. He truly is amazing. Could you just imagine in 2028, you have the articulate, smart, intelligent J.D. Vance as the nominee. Imagine him going up against anyone on the left in a debate. Anyone. Doesn't matter who it is. Crushes them. Okay? Then you've got the VP debate. And you've got Marco Rubio up against whoever it may be. Absolutely crushes them. I'm telling you right now, the Vance-Rubio 2028 ticket, they need to do that. They need to put that together. You will win all the Hispanic votes. You will win a lot of the minority votes. And you have two of the most intellectually intelligent and articulate speakers to ever run for president on any ticket, let alone together. It's a ticket that can't be beat. So I do hope that they do it. But anyway, so this was, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'll do some of it and I'll kind of comment on some of the stuff here. This is Maria, Sunday Morning Futures.
Is the Secretary of State of America, Secretary Marco Rubio. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. Are we now at war with Iran?
Again, stupid question right off the bat.
No, we're not. This is not a war against Iran. This is very simple. 67 days ago, the President of the United States sent the Iranians a letter, and it said, you're not going to have nuclear weapons. You're not going to have a militarized nuclear program. Let's negotiate. I want to do this diplomatically. I want to do this peacefully. They tried to play him along the way they've played every American president for the last 35 years. And, the president told them, if we don't get a deal, which is what he wanted, then I'll have to handle it differently. And that's what he did last night. He handled it differently. But that was an Iranian choice. We didn't make that choice. They did. By playing games with Donald Trump, they made a huge mistake. And President Trump acted last night. And I think the world today is safer and more stable than it was 24 hours ago. And a bunch of these countries putting out statements condemning us, privately, they all agree with us that this needed to be done. They got to do what they got to do.
You know how you know that? Because none of them joined in. Not one. No one said a word. No one sent in anything. The only people that helped out were the CCP. They were bringing in supplies and all kinds of things into Iran, and they ought to be sanctioned for that alone. But again, none of these countries, because the only, and he'll say it in a minute, the impediment to peace in the Middle East is Iran. Nobody else.
For their own public relations purposes, but the only people in the world that are unhappy about what happened in Iran last night is the regime in Iran.
Have you heard from anyone in Iran, and are you expecting retaliation?
Well, if they retaliate, it'll be the worst mistake they've ever made. Look, we can fly in and out of Iran at will. We went in last night. The president...
We own their airspace. They have no defense missile capability. It is gone. Mossad took care of it on night one. They can't shoot anything. They're shooting blanks.
Sent our military forces from halfway across the world, went in, conducted this operation, left. Not a shot was fired against us. They didn't even know what had happened. By the time we left, the planes were out of their airspace before they finally started realizing they'd been hit. So it would be a terrible mistake if Iran retaliates. But that's not our goal. We are not declaring war on Iran. We're not looking for war in Iran. But if they attack us, then I think we have capabilities they haven't even seen yet. It would be a terrible mistake on their part. And frankly, it's not what we hope for or wish. What we want now is to ensure that Iran never has nuclear weapons. If what they want is a civil nuclear program where they have power plants like a lot of other countries in the world have, they can do that. That's the deal that's been
I wouldn't even trust them with that.
offered to them. They rejected it. They played us. They tried to play us, I should say. They wouldn't respond to our offers. They disappeared for 10 days. And now, the president had to take action as a response.
And the response included strategic ambiguity. Can you walk us through the plan in terms of how it was deceptive, not allowing the Iranians to understand what was really taking place?
Well, ultimately, when we do these things, it's because we care about the safety and security of our troops, of our airmen, and all those who are supporting these missions. So, obviously, the element of surprise is important in military tactics. In this particular, now, I don't think...
Not like Democrats that say, we're going to attack you on the third Tuesday next month at 3:30 in the afternoon.
The Iranians or anyone should have been under any mystery. The president said very clearly, we have 60 days to make progress on a deal, and if we don't, I'm going to deal with it differently. But in terms of what people call deception and surprise and things of this nature, the core of that is not the success. The mission was going to be successful no matter what. The core of that was protecting our servicemen and women who are in harm's way and conducting that mission. That's the most important part. And they went in, they did what they needed to do with precision and skill that no other military in the world can do. And they left. And they were well outside of Iranian airspace before the regime even realized what had happened. And that was the goal here, and that was achieved. These planes came from halfway across the world, and no one saw them coming. And that's a huge credit to Pete Hegseth and General Kane and General Kurilla. And
Raising Cain, baby. Trump's loved that guy. He tells that story about him from all the years ago. And now he's, the Joint Chief of Staff. And Marco Rubio's doing a great job. And Pete Hegseth, they laughed at him. They said he didn't have the experience. He was just a talking head on Fox News, right? He's showing up, and he is showing them up. And he is absolutely crushing it as the defense secretary.
And obviously our commander-in-chief for pulling that off.
Well, the president said in a post recently that he knows where the supreme leader is hiding, but that he was not ready to take him out yet. What can you tell us about your expectations with regard to regime change in Iran?
Well, that's certainly not the goal of what we're working on here. The goal is stated very...
I'm sorry, but I disagree with that. It should be. And I said how to do it. You don't have to kill him. You can arrest him. You can shackle him. You can put him in front of the International Criminal Court in The Hague, and you can prosecute him. You can build your case against him. You've got tons of witnesses. You've got tons of evidence. You've got 46 years of murder and mayhem that you can prove. And you can pin crimes against humanity on him, and he can meet the same fate as Saddam Hussein.
Very clearly in a letter the president sent the supreme leader about 65, 67 days ago. And in a letter he said, you're not going to have a nuclear weapon. Let's negotiate peacefully a solution. We can make a really good deal that's good for Iran, good for America, good for the world. If you don't, however, then I'm going to have to deal with this differently. The Iranians didn't like the letter. They didn't respond to it. They ultimately entered into fake negotiations and tried to play him along. In essence, they thought they could do with President Trump what they've done with presidents in the past and get away with it. And they found out last night that they can't. And the world found out last night that you can't. And that's important, not just on this issue, but for so many other issues happening around the world. I think that what we are seeing is that this is a president that tells you what he's going to do, and then he does it. And I think that to a lot of people, including the Iranian regime, is shocking.
What are your expectations in terms of Iran's nuclear capabilities today?
Well, they're certainly degraded. Look, at the end of the day, if Iran is committed to becoming a nuclear weapons power, I do think it puts the regime at risk. I really do. I think it would be the end of the regime if they tried to do that. It's certainly been set back from a technical standpoint, not just due to what we did last night, but obviously
They attacked not only Fordo, of course, destroyed it, Isfahan, right, Natanz, but also they hit Bushehr, which was probably the third or fourth biggest one. They hit Tabriz, Banab, Arak, and Kermanshah, and Bandar Abbas, which is down in the southern region as well. So they hit the entire country. And you know, they were not going for civilians. They weren't trying to kill civilians, unless of course you were, you know, a scientist or you were a IRGC guard or military commander. Yeah, you were gonna get completely destroyed. But they didn't go after citizens. They weren't shooting rockets into schools and hospitals to kill women and children. No, of course not. Because we, Israel, America, are not savages. They are.
Israelis have done incredible work in advance as well. But ultimately, they have to make a decision. It's a very simple decision. If what they want is nuclear reactors so they can have electricity, there are so many other countries in the world that do that, and they don't have to enrich their own uranium. They can do that. But if what they want is a secret program buried in the mountain where no one can see it and inspectors can only come when they say they can come, if that's what they want, then they're going to have big problems, because this is a dangerous, violent, radical regime. Not the Iranian people. We have no problem. We didn't hit Iranian people last night. We hit nuclear facilities. And if what they want is some secret program that looks nothing like the civil nuclear programs around the world, it looks a lot like you're trying to build a bomb, they're going to continue to have problems, not just with us, but with many other countries in the world.
Problems like what? What do you mean?
Like the problems they're facing right now. Listen, why do we have bases in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Qatar and UAE? All of those bases are there to help protect those countries from Iran. Why did Hezbollah exist? Because of Iran. What does Hamas exist? Because of Iran. How do the Houthis exist? Because of Iran. Who built the IEDs that maimed and killed American soldiers in Iraq? Iran. They're behind every problem in this region. They are the sole source of instability in the entire Middle East, and the world's been paying a price for this for 40-something years. Imagine those people having a nuclear weapon, just one nuclear weapon, or even the capability to being on the threshold of having a nuclear weapon. That's what the world was facing. That is unacceptable. President Trump did the world a favor last night, and now Iran should sort of wake up, the Iranian regime should wake up and say, okay, if we really want nuclear energy in our country, there's a way to do it. That offer's still there. We're prepared to talk to them tomorrow and start working on that. Steve Witkoff has traveled extensively around the world trying to reach that deal with them, but they play too many games. They play way too many games, and now they've found out.
The president has said many times no nuclear weapons, but the ultimate goal also happens to be no biological weapons, chemicals, no drones, no proxy warfare. Do you believe that the Iranians will follow that and you'll achieve the ultimate goal of success here, long term?
Well, I don't know what they're going to decide to do next. If they're being rational, I think they realize, if what they want is a country that has a nuclear energy program, they can have that. I mean, many countries around the world. I don't like the regime, but we're not into the regime change business here. We're into the safety and security of the United States business. So that's a choice they'll have to make. I hope they're being rational in their decision making. But I think the most important thing I hope they realize is the game is up. Okay, they have played the world for 40-something years with these nuclear talks and this, delaying things. They got a crazy deal out of John Kerry when he was Secretary of State under the Obama administration, where they got billions of dollars. And by the way, agreed to something that allowed them to continue to build their missile capacity and sponsor terrorism. They've been playing the world for 40-something years. They're not going to play President Trump, and they found out last night.
Remember, in that Iran deal, which thankfully was ripped and torn up to shreds, there was language in that, and I've told you this before, but just giving you a reminder, that if there was a preemptive strike by Israel against Iran in that deal, it actually stated in the paperwork, the language of that deal, that the United States military was not supposed to support Israel and instead was supposed to support defensively Iran. That is how fucking dangerous Democrats are. They can never, ever be trusted with our national security, ever. And thank God President Trump and Israel and Netanyahu and the IDF and our U.S. military did the job and destroyed this nuclear program with Iran. Because God forbid in 2028, for some weird, strange reason, they either steal the election because we're not smart enough to put in safeguards for these elections because we still haven't done it yet. Some things have been done, but not enough. And God forbid they steal an election because they can't win legitimately, right? Guess what? You know what they'll do? They'll hand the Iranians billions of dollars and tell them, go ahead and rebuild your nuclear program. Why? Because they're stupid and they're sick and they're evil. And at their core, they hate the country. And they would rather America be a third world S-hole on par with all these other countries around the world than be the superpower that it is, and even at our own expense. That's the truth about the Democrats.
That when he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. And he doesn't want to do it. It's not his first choice, but it's the only choice. That's the only choice the Iranian regime left us because they play too many games. They use diplomacy to hide behind and obfuscate and think they can buy themselves time. They think they're cute. They're not cute. And they're not going to get away with this stuff. Not under President Trump.
The Europeans have been feckless pretty much throughout this conflict in the last several weeks. What are your expectations for our partners and allies in Europe?
Well, look, I think the Europeans, particularly the Germans, the French, and the Brits, have made very clear that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. In fact, I think the French, for the first time, have kind of leaned forward even more and said they can't even have an enrichment capability. There are existing sanctions under the old JCPOA that we're no longer a part of, but they...
The problem, though, with the French and the Germans and the UK is they're feckless, they're weak, they're yellow-bellied, they'll roll over, and they have no teeth, no grit, no strength, and no balls, okay? And they have been proven that throughout history, except for maybe Winston Churchill and back then. But lately, I mean, come on, they're as weak can be. All they do is placate to the enemies. All they do is leave their borders wide open and allow their countries to be invaded with no-go zones and Muslim areas and everything else. So to say that Europe could do anything at all, they can't do anything. And they never will do anything because they're weak. They're worse than circus lemonade.
They remain a part of. Iran is in complete violation. Okay, and so those three countries have to make a decision by no later than October of this year whether to put sanctions back on Iran, snap them back. And we encourage them to continue to press them on that front because that's another set of pressure. So, obviously, these are allies and partners we work with closely on a bunch of issues around the world. And I think they have in their hands a very powerful piece of leverage on the Iranian regime, which is the snapback provisions under the previous JCPOA. And I think so far they've been very tough and strong on that, and we encourage them to continue to do so and to continue to tell the Iranians, the Iranian regime, I keep saying Iranian regime because it's not the people we have a quarrel with, the Iranian regime, they've consistently messaged them, and we're grateful for it, that the solution to this problem is negotiate directly with the Americans. That's another thing. They don't even talk to us directly. We always have to have a middleman. They want to pass messages and notes like we're in third grade. We're not doing that anymore. Direct negotiations, let's talk about how we peacefully resolve this problem. The Europeans have pressured them on that point, and we encourage them to continue to do so and are grateful that they've been doing that so far.
What about our allies in the Middle East right now? Interesting to note that we have not heard from any of the proxies of Iran. No comment from the Iranians
they're all
so
dead.
far. No comment from Hezbollah or the Houthis. What are your reactions there, as well as our allies in the Middle East? President Trump, of course, using his first trip internationally to go and strengthen relations with our friends in the Middle East.
Well, we made clear that any of these proxies attack America, we're not only going to deal with the proxies, but we're also going to pin it on Iran. We know who's behind these. That's another thing they do. They create these little groups like the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, and then they hide behind them and pretend it's not them. We know it's them, including the Houthis, by the way. So Iran will be held responsible for the actions of these groups. In terms of the other countries in the region, look, I think that we've worked very cooperatively with them. The president just had a great visit to Saudi Arabia, to the UAE, and to Qatar. Very productive. But I just ask and remind everybody, the only reason we have U.S. bases in the region, the only reason we have an air base in Qatar, an air base in UAE, an air base in Saudi Arabia, is because they are afraid that Iran will attack them. And they want us there to help defend them. And so, if Iran wasn't a threat, we wouldn't need those bases there. So these countries fully recognize the threat that Iran poses. That's why they want us there to help defend their oil fields and their infrastructure, or help them defend themselves. And if the Iranian regime was no longer a threat, we wouldn't need to have any of these bases in the region. We wouldn't need to have any American service people in the region. But that's the state of affairs right now. So these countries understand what Iran is and what the regime is, and they get it. They understand.
And like Marco Rubio said, publicly they have to pretend and feign, disapproval of Israel and America knocking out Iran's nuclear program. But behind closed doors, in secret, and calling Marco Rubio and President Trump, they're all saying thank you. Thank you so much for doing what you did. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you know what's going to happen? Remember the Abraham Accords, which were Morocco, Sudan, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. Those 4 countries, normalization of relations with Israel. You're going to see Jordan, you're going to see Egypt, you're going to see Saudi Arabia, you're going to see Qatar, you're going to see Kuwait. You're going to see so many of these other countries that are all wanting the same thing: money and prosperity. It's not about 7th century savages anymore. They want to get away from that. Some of them are still going to be extremists, obviously, but for the most part, they want to move past that. They want to be rich, they want to be wealthy, they want to be prosperous, they want to see futures and their children and grandchildren grow up in peace and freedom and all that. Well, freedom isn't really a big thing in Saudi Arabia. Freedom is not a big thing in Iraq. Freedom is not a big thing in some of these other countries. So they have like a warped sense of quote-unquote freedom because they're still dictators. Let's not lose track of that. They're not free like the United States of America or Israel. They're free to go about and do their thing, but they're also being controlled. But at least they're not being murdered, like they are in Iran. Now, sometimes Saudi Arabia, some of these other countries, yeah, they still do have corporal punishment, capital punishment, all of that stuff, and some of it is even public. So let's not lose track of that. I'm not sitting here with rose-colored glasses on. These are still Muslim countries. But they are Muslim countries that want to prosper, and they want economic, success, and they want to be able to make money and do these deals and everything else. That's why President Trump, they rolled out the red carpet for him. You had, the camel parade and all the other crazy things that they did, because they understand, number one, that he is there to make deals, and they want to be part of that. They want to be part of that. And I'll tell you right now, after what we just did and Israel just did, nobody is going to mess with Israel in the Middle East. They saw what Israel can do. They're not going to mess with Israel anymore. And I'm telling you right now, with the way that we dropped those bunker busters and destroyed that program, that told the rest of the world, do not mess with President Trump. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.